Where to begin? I mean, on the one hand, you have a quid pro quo between a sitting criminal president and the criminal mayor of the biggest city in the country that is so blatantly corrupt, it's resulted in even more resignations from people who are thankfully unwilling to participate in this scheme. On the other hand, you have the world's richest man, a demonstrably terrible person who couldn't be trusted with the data of Twitter users, accessing the data of large swaths of the United States government. A man who has now set his sights on your personal finances and the personal finances of every person in this country. So, throw that on top of the pile of accessing health data, including Medicare and Medicaid, getting his hands on USAID, the Department of Education, the country's payroll department, our nuclear arsenal, our Federal Emergency and Disaster Response Department, our weather data, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and who could forget the FAA? The agency tasked with keeping our planes right side up. And yeah, I'd say we should probably start there, unfortunately, because as annoying as talking about Elon Musk is, living under his rule is much, much worse. So the best we can do is continue to make people aware of what he and his team of gooners are up to and what they're up to next. And that is getting their hands on your complete financial profile.
I feel so efficient.
Are you feeling more efficient, folks? Because if you're not, Musk can pretty much just type in your name and figure out where the pain points are.
Sweet. So Musk and his team of little boys have targeted the IRS. Now, I know what you're thinking. Boo! Taxes! Boo! Everyone hates taxes.
It's true.
Who cares what DOGE does to the IRS? I say good riddance. Well, buddy, just like with everything else, this is absolutely not going to benefit you or anyone you care about, and will only benefit the absolute richest members of society, while making sure that you continue paying more than your fair share. For context, the IRS being underfunded was done intentionally, because going after the biggest tax cheats requires a ton of investigative and legal work, so it costs a ton of money. The Biden administration, despite its faults, allocated $60 billion worth of funding for the IRS so that it could finally go after the millionaires and billionaires that haven't been paying their fair share, as the act specifically targeted people making over $400,000 per year. We said it back when this was proposed and enacted, but this is another example of funding where the return is far greater than the cost.
Yeah.
And it's an actual example of making things more efficient because it pays for itself, and then some. A study released a few weeks back from Clemson University already showed progress with the increased IRS funding through Biden's Inflation Reduction Act.
The Internal Revenue Service has ramped up its efforts to recover unpaid taxes from millionaires. It collected more than $1.1 billion from 1,600 wealthy Americans with known but unpaid tax debts in the 2024 fiscal year, up from just $38 million a year earlier.
That's quite the increase.
Yeah. With 1,600 Americans who were clearly not paying their fair share, and they were just like, okay, well, time to cough it up. And that massive increase came from that small amount of people.
But what if they were going to use that money they stole from the government to create jobs?
Well, they go into further details about precisely who was being targeted by this increased funding, and they reiterate that the audit rate for anyone making under $400,000 a year has remained unchanged at 0.3% of likelihood. So extremely wealthy people using loopholes, workarounds, or shrewd legal maneuvers make things more expensive and difficult for everyone else. So actually funding a department to simply go after what is owed seems like a pretty good thing that a majority of Americans would get behind, since a majority of Americans do not make $400,000 a year, but do pay a significant amount in taxes.
Now, hold on. I plan on making $400,000 a year at some point.
Yes,
and when I do, this is going to piss me off quite a lot.
Yes, the standard American who is typically or temporarily just
I'm only temporarily embarrassed.
Yeah.
One day I will no longer be embarrassed. I will take my seat rightfully in that tax bracket, and this is going to really fuck up my shit.
Yeah, every American thinks that they are going to be a billionaire eventually. But yes, this program was already successful, once again from that Clemson report. The IRS used part of its new funding to triple the audit rates on large corporations and increase audits on partnerships with more than $10 million in assets. Overall, with the additional funding, the IRS made remarkable progress in the 2024 fiscal year, securing nearly $100 billion through its audits of filed tax returns. Notably, the IRS spent only 34 cents for every $100 collected through audits.
Seems pretty efficient.
Yeah.
All that is to say, though, the program not only paid for itself by going after wealthy tax cheats, it actually brought in additional revenue that could, and should have been in the first place, used to fund other aspects of the government, including infrastructure, education, healthcare, transportation, etc. It's easier to work on big, beneficial projects when the richest people from the richest country actually pay back into the country that allowed them the opportunity to amass such wealth.
Yeah.
Sorry about the explainer, but otherwise we'd just get a bunch of comments from people complaining that we aren't taking Trump and Musk at face value when they say they're getting into IRS systems for the good of the people. And according to what appears to be an official IRS DOGE account, finding and fixing waste, fraud, and abuse relating to the Internal Revenue Service. In fact, Musk and his boys, his little boys, and his AI model having intimate financial data tied to every single America, it's bad, actually. We simply don't believe them when they say they can be trusted with access to that information and data, and that they will definitely not download that data for their own purposes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and I'll put my somewhat believable conspiracy hat on for a second. But it's certainly not far-fetched to imagine Elon Musk and the Trump administration taking all the data that they've gotten from every government agency, including the IRS, the FBI, Treasury, all that, feeding it into their artificial intelligence and building their own personal, searchable database of every American citizen. And it's not hard to imagine what a vindictive, egomaniacal narcissist with unlimited access to money and power could do with that. It's like having an actual supervillain, but he's really pathetic and lame. Like how DOGE initially targeted the EPA, for example. You see, the Joker would straight up poison the city. He would poison the city's water supply. He would make quick work of it. That would be the arc of that episode. Elon Musk just dismantles the regulatory body that monitors and prevents contamination in municipal water supplies, leaving the door wide open for inevitable catastrophe, but not going as far as dumping a vat of neon green liquid into a reservoir or something.
That's the Joker's job.
Now, Lex Loser and his cronies are getting access to the IRS, and just in time for people to start worrying about filing, paying for, or in a lot of cases, patiently waiting for a tax return to hit their mailbox or their bank accounts. Bad time, worse fucking initiative. This is not a good idea, and especially not a good idea right now.
And maybe if we don't like the things you're saying, maybe we don't give you that check.
Yeah, that would be the end implication there.
Or
we don't like the things you're saying, so we can easily type your name in and just blackmail the hell out of you.
Yeah, he's already talked openly on X about like digging through the tax filings of people like Chuck Schumer or whatever.
Yeah.
His political enemies.
Yes.
And, based on all the big bombshell pieces of data he's found so far by digging around in the back of the government, he's going to find something that is actually like completely innocuous, but because he's a fucking idiot, he's going to be like, oh, looks like you did a crime. And it's going to be this whole thing.
Yeah.
Everything he's found so far, like the stuff with these 150 people who are 150 years old.
No, Wired pointed out that was factually untrue, and it was the result of like a computer data.
Yeah, it's because the government uses an old system called COBOL, where blank fields revert to 1875. So if they don't know
that's why there's so many people who are exactly that age.
Yeah, if the government doesn't have your date of birth, it just reverts to 1875. Yeah. Then there's the condoms going to Gaza, even though it's a city named Gaza that's not in Palestine. It's in Africa, and it's a place where USAID was trying to prevent the spread of AIDS by providing contraceptives.
Yeah, it's just like
Pretty
when you
big
start
distinction.
pulling the wires out of Twitter, except much more catastrophic and actually hurts people's lives. But with more on Musk digging around inside of all of your finances, here's the Washington Post.
Elon Musk's U.S. DOGE service is seeking access to a heavily guarded Internal Revenue Service system that includes detailed financial information about every taxpayer, business, and nonprofit in the country, according to 3 people familiar with the activities, sparking alarm within the tax agency. Under pressure from the White House, the IRS is considering a memorandum of understanding that would give officials from DOGE, which stands for Department of Government Efficiency, broad access to tax agency systems, property, and data sets. Among them is the Integrated Data Retrieval System, or IDRS, which enables tax agency employees to access IRS accounts, including personal identification numbers and bank information. It also lets them enter and adjust transaction data and automatically generate notices, collection documents, and other records. According to a draft of the memorandum obtained by the Washington Post, DOGE software engineer Gavin Kleiger is set to work at the IRS for 120 days, though the tax agency and the White House can renew his deployment for the same duration. The agreement requires that Kleiger maintain confidentiality of tax return information, shield it from unauthorized access, and destroy any such information shared with him upon the completion of his IRS deployment. I don't think he's going to do that.
Yeah, I would say that I don't trust someone, just in general, I don't trust this guy because of his association with Musk, but also someone who hasn't been vetted for any kind of security clearance at all.
The few things we do know about him
not great.
make me think he's not trustworthy.
Well, quick reminder that his team, again, has not gone through the traditional vetting process. And giving everyone a promise not to do anything illegal with this extremely personal information doesn't exactly leave me with all the confidence in the world.
No.
As the Post continues to explain, it's highly unusual to grant political appointees access to personal taxpayer data, or even programs adjacent to that data, experts say. IRS commissioners traditionally do not have IDRS access. The same goes for the National Taxpayer Advocate, the agency's internal consumer watchdog, according to Nina Olson, who served in the role from 2001 to 2019. The information that the IRS has is incredibly personal. Someone with access to it could use it and make it public in a way, or do something with it, or share it with someone else who shares it with someone else, and your rights get violated, Olson said. A Trump administration official said DOGE personnel needed IDRS access because DOGE staff are working to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse and improve government performance to better serve the people. Kleiger arrived unannounced at IRS headquarters on Thursday and was named senior advisor to the acting commissioner. IRS officials were told to treat Kleiger and other DOGE officials as contractors, two people familiar said. A White House official said Sunday, however, that DOGE personnel at the IRS were full agency employees and not contractors.
Well, tomato.
Yeah, just let them do whatever they want. There's literally no legal recourse for us.
The point is, whatever they're doing, they're allowed to do it. So,
yeah, just let them do it.
And you can't stop them. And if you do try to, you're gone. You're fired.
Yeah.
But there are some people who continue to push back and who refuse to let the DOGE team decimate their organization while they're still part of it. And the latest resignation should probably worry everyone, but specifically older folks, because the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration has departed in protest after Musk and DOGE attempted to access sensitive personal data about millions of Americans held by the agency, according to people familiar with the matter. I don't like that.
No, it's weird because like you would think that they would be, deploying a bunch of like state-of-the-art ways to actually make the government systems more efficient, these antiquated systems. Instead, they're just like pulling all this data on American citizens.
Also, I mean, Social Security, that's a political third rail that
you typically don't touch.
You don't want to touch it.
That's literally the livelihoods of millions of elderly Americans who, in some cases, can't take care of themselves otherwise.
Yeah, it's sort of the difference between dying comfortably and dying in poverty.
Yeah. Here's the New York Times with more.
The resignation of Michelle King, the acting commissioner, is the latest abrupt departure of a senior federal official who refused to provide Mr. Musk's lieutenants with access to closely held data. Social Security payments account for about $1.5 trillion, or a fifth of the annual federal spending in the United States. And once again, they're doing this under the guise of eliminating waste or overspending. And Musk even lied in an attempt to drum up support for accessing the Social Security Administration, saying that they found tons of people who are 150 years old getting benefits.
Yeah.
He provided no proof for the statement, or really any of his other statements.
No.
And Wired did the smallest amount of digging to disprove that claim entirely. It's really anyone who worked in computer science before the 1980s was like, 1875. That's familiar.
Wow.
Here you go. Yeah. In fact, a recent audit of the SSA found that from 2015 to 2022, less than 1% of funds were sent improperly. But once again, this just seems like a massive data grab.
Yeah.
Here's the Times again.
Mr. Musk's team at the Social Security Administration was seeking access to an internal data repository that contains extensive personal information about Americans, according to two people familiar with the matter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity out of fear of retaliation. The agency's systems contain financial data, employment information, and addresses for anyone with a Social Security number. SSA has comprehensive medical records of people who have applied for disability benefits, said Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works, a group that promotes the expansion of Social Security. It has our bank information, our earnings records, the names and ages of our children, and much more. Warning about the risks of Mr. Musk's team gaining access to the data, Ms. Altman added, "There is no way to overstate how serious a breach this is."
Well, what would she know?
And they add that the Senate has not taken up the nomination of Mr. Trump's pick to oversee that agency, Frank Bisignano, a financial technology executive who runs a digital payments company. A White House spokesman, Harrison Field, said on Monday that he expected Mr. Bisignano to soon be confirmed.
Don't like it. I don't like it. Elsewhere, cuts at vital agencies continue to return dividends. So why not cut them further? Nothing bad has happened with airline travel in the past few weeks. Well,
yes. So why not just cut the FAA a little bit more?
Yeah.
You know, the Federal Aviation Administration.
Trim the fat.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's too many people working at the FAA. The plane that flipped over, that was landing in Toronto.
That's not a U.S.
Not
problem.
our problem.
Sure, it started here, but
It originated in the U.S., but once it crosses that line,
And were the Canadians on the ground helping every person on that plane survive that, by the footage, catastrophic, nearly deadly plane crash? Yes, that was
one of the craziest things that I've ever seen.
And for everyone to survive is wild.
But so that insane, luckily non-fatal incident, it adds to a growing list of incidents in general involving planes.
There was one while we were coming into the office today in Georgia.
Yeah, it seems, I don't know. I don't remember this many planes crashing. And
I do know a bunch of like small planes that tends to happen.
It does happen.
But not with this frequency and not in the planes that are being affected here. Typically.
Yeah, I have a flight in a month and it is making me really just stressed out thinking about how bad things will be by then.
I've seen at least 10 posts, and that's because it's true. But they're all similar in tone, saying that it is now actually socially acceptable to clap when the plane lands.
Yeah. Whew. But yeah, regardless, you'd think that announcing job cuts at agencies tasked with keeping people safe and alive while airborne would be awful, not just on a practical level, but also just horrible PR, bad optics after all these multiple crashes. But nevertheless, he persisted, and the Trump administration began mass layoffs of FAA staff this week. Here's CBS News with more.
The Trump administration has begun firing several hundred Federal Aviation Administration employees, upending staff on a busy air travel weekend just weeks after a fatal mid-air collision at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport in January. Probationary workers were targeted in late-night emails on Friday, notifying them that they had been fired. David Sparrow, president of the Professional Aviation Safety Specialists Union, said in a statement, "The impacted workers include system specialists, safety inspectors, maintenance mechanics, administration staff, and more," the union said. Spiro said messages began arriving after 7 p.m. on Friday and continued late into the night. More might be notified over the long weekend or barred from entering FAA buildings on Tuesday, he said. The employees were fired without cause nor based on performance or conduct, Spiro said, and the emails were from an executive order Microsoft email addresses, not a government email address.
Okay.
Again, in the grand scheme of things, it is a small percentage of the overall FAA workforce, but firing safety inspectors, mechanics, system specialists, those roles specifically after a tragedy and another handful of incidents that could have been far worse, it's not instilling a whole lot of confidence. And also it seems like they're just doing, it seems like a classic of Trump and Musk, just a machete to certain things where they see the word probationary and they're like, all right, well, just get rid of that. We don't need that.
Yeah, they're on probation? They must have done something wrong.
In Trump's brain, that probably means that they got out of jail and these are like jobs reconnecting them to society. Because he did the same thing with the insane asylum.
Why are these people that just got out of prison managing our airplanes? It's crazy, though, because like out of all the government bodies, like the FAA notoriously has been understaffed and underfunded going back a while.
Yeah.
And what's especially rich is they're like, oh, we're, this is so we can upgrade the computer systems and all that. And like people within the FAA have been like, yeah, we've had new like hardware and software ready to go for years, but Republicans keep fucking vetoing it and slashing our budget to actually implement that.
Yes.
So now you want to do it. Oh, okay.
It's literally a classic trope. And we've mentioned it here even recently because that's what it seems to be, or what seems to be happening now is that you destroy these agencies financially and watch them fail and then point and say, well, look, obviously the private sector needs to come in and
post office, like, wow, the post office sucks. We should get rid of it. And it's like, it didn't start sucking until you
the Bush administration
made it your mission to make it suck.
Also, another last minute news thing that I didn't get to in here because it did happen like as I was writing, but DOGE announced that he's resigning from the post office.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
But that's the thing is it's now on Trump to install another one, and will he even do that, or will he just get rid of it entirely?
Guess we'll see. But yeah, it's not just half of America who's baffled by the decisions coming out of this administration. All of our former friends have basically removed us from the group text because we keep spamming the chat with racist memes, shit talking, and general threats.
Europe said, we have to get rid of the United States. They keep posting garbage in our group chat.
Yeah.
The U.S. has green bubbles now. They went back to Android.
And we'll get to that and the latest on New York City's compromised criminal mayor in just a second. But first, we have to take a moment to thank today's sponsors for supporting this show, starting with Tempo. Who's hungry?
Yeah.
We always are. Always.
Yep.
And that's why we are more than happy to stuff ourselves with delicious food from our sponsors. And we have a new one for you to try today, Tempo. When you think about fast food, you probably think about unhealthy, thawed-out patties dripping with grease. But when you're on a tight schedule and need to save time, you might not have any other options. If this sounds familiar, well, you need to check out Tempo. Tempo can provide you with protein-packed fuel to save time without compromising your health goals.
Everybody knows about my health goals. Boy, I've got the LA Marathon in about a month. I think less than a month now. So Tempo's helping me out.
Time to kick up the tempo.
Yeah, Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. Tempo serves up fast, feel-good, single-serving meals that are crafted to cook in just 3 minutes, so you can eat well without sacrificing taste or convenience. With new recipes each week that are made with real ingredients and are nutrient-rich, they make it easy to keep up a healthy lifestyle. Tempo's perfectly portioned lunches and dinners take the guesswork out of eating well, are fully prepared, and can be heated in the microwave in just 3 minutes. Tempo offers a variety of meals for different dietary and taste preferences, including protein-packed, calorie-conscious, carb-conscious, and fiber-rich.
Ooh, I'm rich.
For a limited time, Tempo is offering our viewers 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/todaydaily. That is tempomeals.com/todaydaily for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/todaydaily. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is also sponsored by Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret Shop Pay, which boosts conversions up to 50%, which means way less carts being abandoned and way more sales for your business. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, good marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify.
So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Basically, every band or record label that I buy merch or music from uses Shopify, and it is great for keeping track of those orders because a lot of times it's pre-orders. It's like, I need that hot red blue mixed vinyl. It's going to be here in 6 months, I promise. I've got an old man mush brain, so it's honestly super helpful having all my online orders tracked in one place. But you can upgrade your business and get the same checkout experience as those retailers by signing up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/itdaily, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/itdaily to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/itdaily.
Okay, back to the news now, and about that whole our allies are actually fucking pissed at us. They no longer trust our country, whatever.
You know, that whole thing.
Yeah. Well, you all remember J.D. Vance, right?
I don't know. He had a beard, right?
He did.
He had a...
I think he still does.
Okay.
He is, I guess, the vice president still.
Is he? I'd say like vice assistant to the vice president.
You'll fact check it.
Yeah.
But the Trump administration, they sent little JD over to Europe. On your way, JD.
Yeah.
While President Musk and Vice President Trump continued their work of dismantling the government. And Vance quickly got to work dismantling relations with our nation's greatest allies, attacking European countries on topics like free speech and migration. Here's the BBC. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has launched a scalding attack on European democracies, saying the greatest threat facing the continent was not from Russia and China, but from within. He spent the majority accusing European governments, including the UK's, of retreating from their values and ignoring voter concerns on migration and free speech.
The address was met by silence in the hall and later denounced by several politicians at the conference. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said it was not acceptable. Vance used his 20-minute speech to single out several European nations, including the UK. In his own speech, Pistorius directly addressed Vance, saying, "Democracy was called into question by the U.S. Vice President for the whole of Europe. He speaks of the annihilation of democracy," Pistorius continued. "And if I have understood him correctly, he is comparing conditions in parts of Europe with those in authoritarian regimes. That is not acceptable." The fallout of Vance's visit caused leaders of Europe's biggest countries to meet and assess just how the United States is acting.
Yeah,
we got to get a read on this.
Quick sidebar, everyone except JD. Come over here.
Yeah. Let's go to Paris really quick and meet up. That is, of course, including the effect that all of this will have on Ukraine as Trump attempts a quote-unquote deal to end the war, which, by the way, not a deal, just giving Russia everything. Doesn't seem like a good deal. Here's the New York Times.
The meeting in Paris was pulled together hastily after the first visit to Europe last week by Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, which left European leaders alarmed by both the tone and message of the new Trump administration and what it might hold for the continent. European leaders were shocked by the hostility of Mr. Vance's scathing speech in Munich, criticizing Europe's exclusion of far-right groups from power, and the sudden American plans to begin peace talks with Russia in Saudi Arabia starting on Tuesday without the presence of Ukrainian or European leaders. Europe's security is at a turning point, said Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, on X after arriving in Paris on Monday. Yes, it is about Ukraine, but it is also about us. We need an urgency mindset. We need a surge in defense, and we need both of them now. The meeting, called by President Emmanuel Macron of France at the Élysée Palace, was an initial effort to discuss a more coordinated and collective response to the Trump administration. So the whole thing's a mess, because essentially Trump and Putin are negotiating an end to the war, which basically it just declares Russia the victor and gives Ukraine nothing, while tasking all of Europe to protect Ukraine after that deal is reached. A deal that they have apparently no input on.
Yeah.
Seems like a bad deal.
So, yeah, that's cool. But now let's give you an update on New York City's criminal mayor, Eric Adams, who is a criminal no longer, at least temporarily.
He's no longer being prosecuted.
At least while he's in charge of New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of.
That's right.
But that's because he made a deal with the Trump administration and immigration officials so that the Justice Department would force prosecutors to drop the corruption case against Eric Adams.
Seems like quid pro quo.
Yeah, it's legitimately
Seems like extortion.
wild that this is happening out in the open. But once again, it's falling on the shoulders of career professionals who are so far unwilling to put their names and careers on the line in order to throw away an investigation into a compromised mayor and instead fully participate in a quid pro quo ordered by a convicted felon of a president. Now, only after several people have stepped down instead of dropping the case, the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, who had up until this point been fully supportive of the mayor, has said she's meeting with local officials to come up with some kind of path forward. I think the only path forward will be removing Eric Adams from office.
Yeah, it's tricky though because it's never been done. It is kind of it's a red line. It's one of those things. It's like how in the UK, like the king can technically like have the prime minister replaced or some shit, but like it's never happened because like that's crazy and it sets a precedent.
Yes.
Where any other governor, let's say in a red state, who has that same powers in the state constitution could be like, okay, well, I'm just firing all the Democrat mayors that I don't like.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it benefits the Trump administration in both ways because they get Eric Adams, who is not even by choice, just has to go along with whatever he says. And on the other hand, if the Kathy Hochul, who's a Democrat, but you know,
yeah, she sucks.
If she forcefully removes him, then yes, that also makes her look bad in the eyes of all of his supporters. So it's like
I think she should do it though, because like that. I mean, if any situation called for it,
it would be this.
Yeah. And also, like the second you do that, like Trump loses all fucking leverage over the city and state of New York,
and it really makes him upset, which is also a bonus. Here's NBC News with the latest, and keep in mind these next resignations are on top of the ones that we mentioned throughout our two most recent episodes.
Yeah, it's been a real massacre. 4 of New York Mayor Eric Adams' deputies have resigned amid the fallout over the Justice Department's move to dismiss corruption charges against him last week and his cooperation with the Trump administration on immigration matters. Hours after the resignations were made public, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced that she would be meeting Tuesday with key leaders to discuss a path forward to ensure stability for New York City. In a statement, she also addressed the governor's constitutional power to remove a mayor. In the 235 years of New York State history, these powers have never been utilized to remove a duly elected mayor. Overturning the will of the voters is a serious step that should not be taken lightly, she said in the statement. That said, the alleged conduct at City Hall that has been reported over the past 2 weeks is troubling and cannot be ignored.
I would argue that the alleged conduct that took place far before that at City Hall was
Also
troubling and shouldn't be ignored. But yes, the protests as a result of that are also troubling, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it is, so like if she removed Eric Adams from office for being accused of a bunch of crimes, like that would be one thing, because it's like, okay, what about due process? But if she's removing him from office because the city government of New York literally cannot
operate,
function,
yeah.
that is, I think, an even better reason.
Yeah.
More justifiable, at least. The reporting continues. It adds that the deputy mayor's announcements add to a wave of resignations following the Justice Department's decision to dismiss the bribery and fraud charges against Adams. At least 7 Justice Department officials have resigned over the department's handling of Adams' case, including Manhattan's top federal prosecutor Danielle R. Sassoon, who refused to drop the charges against Adams after BOVE ordered U.S. prosecutors to do so. BOVE being the 80-year-old millennial.
And Sassoon being a Republican, a conservative.
Yeah.
Who is just like, well, no, they got him dead to rights.
But you look at her, she looks great. She's like 30-something. She looks 20-something.
I
Because
mean-
she doesn't have the hate within her.
Well, she gets free access to all those beautiful Sassoon beauty products.
She does.
Vidal,
Yeah.
Sassoon, hello,
Yeah.
party up top. Anyways, finally today, Mexico is now saying that they will potentially file suit against Google over the Gulf of America name change, because technically they control more of it.
They do.
Yeah, the move was clearly done just to please the ego of Trump. Google did this just so they could be like, look, we're on your side. It's fine. We changed the name. It's cool. And again, like, this is a dumb thing to focus on. Outside of everything else that's going on, this is one of the dumber kind of things to focus on. But it's a test fire across the back, seeing what he can get away with. So yes, it is important to push back on this. But here's the Associated Press with more. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Thursday that her government wouldn't rule out filing a civil lawsuit against Google if it maintains its stance of calling the stretch of sea between northeastern Mexico and the southeastern United States the Gulf of America. Sheinbaum, in her morning news conference, said the president's decree is restricted to the continental shelf of the United States because Mexico still controls much of the Gulf. We have sovereignty over our continental shelf, she said. Sheinbaum said that despite the fact that her government sent a letter to Google saying that the company was wrong and that the entire Gulf of Mexico cannot be called the Gulf of America, the company has insisted on maintaining the nomenclature.
We will wait for Google's response, and if not, we will proceed to court, Sheinbaum said Monday during a morning press briefing. Mexico has argued that the mapping policy violates Mexican sovereignty because the U.S. only has jurisdiction over around 46% of the Gulf. The rest is controlled by Mexico, which controls 49%, and Cuba, which controls around 5%. The name Gulf of Mexico dates back to 1607 and is recognized by the United Nations.
And that's a major reason why the Associated Press originally was like, well, you know, we do news wires for the entire fucking world.
Yeah, it would be a little silly. Be like if anytime we talked about soda, we called it pop. Like, it's just not. It's a little bit rude. You're not going to do it.
The upper Midwest, I guess, would be very upset with you.
They would.
I did see, you know, a nice olive branch that was put out online in the past couple of days that says we should just include everyone. And we include, you know, let's say in this order, Cuba, the United States, and Mexico. And it could be the Gulf of Cum.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I think that's a nice, happy medium.
The funniest part of it is if it was called the Gulf of the Americas, I think everyone would actually be cool with it because especially in Latin America, they have a whole thing where they don't like that we call ourselves America because they consider America to be the description of the entire region. I feel like that would be a great compromise
Yeah, but
for
that would
everyone.
give
but
Trump the ego boost that he needs.
yeah, Trump and people who love Trump would be like, what do you mean there's plural Americas? No, there's only one America, and it's number one.
But yeah, and as many have pointed out, it is very funny that they are so dang upset about people not respecting this name change.
Yeah, why are you dead naming my Gulf?
It's just frustrating. But we'll be here to deal with all this frustration alongside you and give it to you in a way that is, I guess, entertaining. Hopefully, or at least educational, something. Anyways, if you got anything out of today's video, please click the like button. It's the only thing that makes me happy. Please!
I need those likes.
Click the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave a comment about whatever you want. I don't even care anymore. Make sure you watch our most recent videos. We got Weekly Weird News. We got News Dump. And we'll be back for some tech news. So stay tuned, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.